Picture a page of yellowing sheet music, a private diary written in a foreign language, and a concert hall where the words being sung mean the exact opposite of what the audience is allowed to understand. Here are 12 composers who buried their love inside their own music, and the specific pieces where, if you know where to look, you can still hear it. Some hid it in the lyrics. One stopped hiding it altogether. Let us begin. Number 12. Roger Quilter. If you have ever sat through an English recital of gentle, aching art songs, poems by Shakespeare and Tennyson set to melting piano, there's a good chance you heard the work of Roger Quilter. He wrote more than 100 of them, and they are a cornerstone of the English song tradition. And he wrote them as a gay man, in an England that made that a crime. Quilter was a wealthy, sensitive, painfully private man, and the strain of hiding who he was wore on him his whole life. So listen to what he chose to set. Tennyson's Now sleeps the crimson petal, a hushed, breathless invitation to a lover to come close in the dark. He poured that longing into song after song, love poetry addressed to no one he was ever allowed to name out loud. The feeling had to go somewhere. It went into the music, exquisite, restrained, and quietly full of a desire he could never state plainly. It is all there in the songs, for anyone willing to hear it. Number 11. Charles Tomlinson Griffiths. Charles Tomlinson Griffiths was one of the most promising American composers of the early 20th century, a shimmering impressionist talent before his life was cut short by illness in 1920 at just 35, and we know exactly who he loved because he wrote it down. Griffiths kept diaries in German, and in them he was candid, describing his life and his relationships with men with a frankness that was almost unthinkable for his time and place. He had a long, committed relationship with a New York City policeman. His sister destroyed some of his papers after his death, an act of erasure by a family member that this channel sees again and again. But enough survived, so here's a composer who, in private, on the page, simply told the truth about his own heart, in a locked language, in a locked drawer, decades before the world would let him say it out loud. Number 10. Tchaikovsky Sorabji. Tchaikovsky Sorabji was one of the strangest and most fascinating figures in all of music. A reclusive English composer of Indian and European descent who wrote pieces of almost superhuman length and difficulty, including piano works that run for hours without a break. He guarded his privacy so fiercely that for decades he banned public performance of his own music. And in 1920, wrestling with his own sexuality in a hostile world, Sorabji did something quietly moving. He reached out to one of the only people in that era writing sympathetically about same-sex desire, a pioneering sexuality researcher who helped him come to terms with who he was. In gratitude, Sorabji dedicated one of his enormous piano concertos to the man. Think about that. A composer unable to speak his truth to the world carved his acceptance of himself into the dedication page of a monumental piece of music, a permanent public thank you for being allowed, finally, to exist. Number 9. Camille Saint-Saëns. Camille Saint-Saëns was one of the towering French composers of the 19th century, the man behind the Carnival of the Animals and the opera Samson and Delilah. And whether he loved men is one of the genuine, unresolved questions of music history, so I am flagging it honestly. Saint-Saëns married, briefly and disastrously, and spent much of his later life traveling alone to warm countries, in particular North Africa, in a pattern that some biographers read as a discreet search for the freedom to be himself that France would not allow. There were rumors in his own lifetime, but he was an intensely guarded man who left no confession, and so the honest verdict is that we do not know. I will not tell you Saint-Saëns was gay, because I cannot prove it. I will tell you that the question has followed him for over a century, and that he arranged his life in a way that kept a great deal carefully out of view. Number 8. Reynaldo Hahn. Some composers hid their love in the music by accident of circumstance. Reynaldo Hahn built a whole style of song out of his. Hahn was the toast of elegant Paris, a composer of impossibly delicate, intimate songs, and as a young man, he was the great love of the novelist Marcel Proust. The two met in their early 20s and fell headlong for each other. And it was in exactly those years, glowing with that first great love, that Hahn wrote some of his most famous and most tender songs. When you hear that hushed, caressing quality in his music, that sense of a secret being whispered rather than sung, you are hearing the sound of a young man in love with another young man, pouring it into melody because that was the only safe place to put it. Proust, for his part, took Hahn and folded him into the greatest novel of the century. Two of the finest artists France produced loved each other first and made their art out of it after. Number 7. David del Tredici. Every composer so far had to bury it. This one dug it back up and put it on the marquee. David del Tredici was a Pulitzer Prize-winning American composer, and for the first half of his career, he wrote in the abstract, coded language of high modernism. And then, in his own words, he came out, not once but 3 times, and the 3rd time changed his music forever. In 2001, the San Francisco Symphony premiered a large orchestral song cycle by del Tredici called With Zero Disguise, Gay Life. It set poetry by openly gay writers, and it existed for one reason: to celebrate, out loud, in a grand concert hall, the exact thing every earlier name on this list had been forced to smuggle and hide. He has a whole category of his own work he simply labels his gay pieces. After centuries of composers hiding love inside the notes, del Tredici walked onto the stage of a major symphony and gave that love its own title, In Lights. He is what the end of the hiding sounds like. Number 6. Michael Tippett. Michael Tippett was one of the 2 giants of 20th century British music, spoken of in the same breath as the man who tops this list. He was a composer of huge ambition and moral seriousness, a pacifist who was actually imprisoned during the Second World War for refusing to fight. And he was a gay man who, remarkably for his generation, was fairly open about it. Late in his life, Tippett wrote a set of songs called Songs for Achilles. The title alone tells you everything. He reached back, as so many gay artists have, to the ancient Greek warrior Achilles and the man he loved more than his own life, and he set that love to music plainly under its own name. Tippett had lived long enough to see the world begin, barely, to change, and he used that hard-won freedom to write openly about love between men, drawing on the oldest such love story we have. Where others left clues, Tippett left a signpost. Number 5. John Cage. John Cage is the most famous experimental composer who ever lived. The man behind the notorious silent piece where a performer sits at a piano and plays nothing at all for 4.5 minutes. He spent his career tearing up the rule book of what music even is. And the great love and great collaborator of his life was the choreographer Merce Cunningham. For roughly half a century, Cage and Cunningham were partners in every sense, in life and in art. Cunningham made the dances, Cage made the sound, and the two ran alongside each other, deliberately independent, yet inseparable, for decade after decade. It is one of the longest and most productive creative partnerships in the history of modern art, and it was a love story between 2 men. With Cage, the love is not hidden inside a single piece of music. The love is the whole body of work, the entire shared life's output of 2 men who built a revolution in art together, side by side, until death parted them. Number 4. Francis Poulenc. Francis Poulenc was famous for 2 faces: the sparkling, witty Parisian and the composer of some of the most profound and desolate sacred music of the 20th century. Friends called him half monk, half rascal, and the door between those 2 halves was grief, specifically grief over the men he loved. Poulenc was gay, and across his life he loved a series of men, some of those relationships deep and serious. When one of the great loves of his life died, the loss went straight into his music, into hushed, devastating religious works where you genuinely cannot tell where his mourning for a lover ends and his prayers begin. That is the remarkable thing about Poulenc. He took a love the world told him was profane, and he poured it into the most sacred music he could write, until the 2 became the same thing. His grief for a man became his conversation with God. It is all sitting there, in the sound, if you know what you are listening to. Number 3. Karol Szymanowski. In Poland, Karol Szymanowski is revered as the greatest composer since Chopin. And into his masterpiece, the opera king Roger, he built his own desire so completely that the whole work is essentially about it. The opera tells of a medieval king whose ordered world is upended when a beautiful stranger arrives, preaching a gospel of beauty and freedom, and the king finds himself utterly consumed by his fascination with this man. That is the entire drama, a ruler undone by longing for another man. Szymanowski was himself openly, unmistakably gay, and elsewhere he wrote a whole novel on the subject of love between men. So, he did not sprinkle a clue into a phrase here or there. He took the central obsession of his own heart and made it the beating center of the greatest thing he ever wrote, then dressed it in medieval robes so the world could look at it without flinching. The disguise is thin on purpose. He wanted you to see through it. Number 2. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Everyone knows the ballets, But the most nakedly personal thing Tchaikovsky ever wrote was his very last completed work, the Sixth Symphony, the one he called the Pathétique. He conducted its premiere just 9 days before he suddenly died, and he told people it was the best and most sincere thing he had ever done, that he had, in his own words, put his whole soul into it. It is a symphony that does something almost no symphony does. It ends not in triumph, but in a long, slow, grieving descent into darkness and silence, one of the most devastating final movements in all of music. And Tchaikovsky dedicated this, his most intimate confession, to a young man named Bob Davidoff, who had become the emotional center of his final years, and whom he loved with an intensity he could pour into music but never state to the world. So his last testament, the piece he emptied his soul into, is a wordless outpouring of love and despair addressed to a man and disguised as absolute music so that everyone could weep at it for a century without being told what and who it was really about. Number 1. He is, by common agreement, the greatest British composer of the 20th century, the man who dragged his nation's music back to the front rank of the world. He wrote for one voice above all others, the voice of the tenor who was his partner in life, and he tailored roll after roll, song after song, to the exact grain of that beloved sound. And in 1940, he wrote the piece that is the whole reason this episode exists. His name was Benjamin Britten, and the piece is called The Seven Sonnets of Michelangelo. Here is what it actually is. Britten took a set of love sonnets and set them to gorgeous music for his partner Peter Pears to sing. And the sonnets he chose were not just any love poems. They were written centuries earlier by Michelangelo, most of them addressed to a specific man Michelangelo loved. So, this is a gay composer setting a gay artist's love poems to another man, to be sung by the composer's own male lover, in public, on the concert stage. And now the detail that makes it perfect. He wrote it while love between men was a crime in Britain. So, at the very first performance in a concert hall in wartime London, they simply did not print the English translation in the program. The audience heard a tenor pour his heart out in ravishing music, in Italian, and unless they happened to read Renaissance Italian, they had no idea they were listening to one man sing his open, unhidden love for another. The love was not buried deep in the notes. It was right there in the words, sung out loud to a full room, protected by nothing more than the language it was in. Britten and Pears performed it together, around the world, for the rest of their lives. It was hiding in plain sight, in plain song, the most honest secret ever kept on a public stage. They could not say it, so they sang it in a language you were not meant to understand, and then they stood there and dared you to translate it.